Hi, Andrew here, and a while ago we reviewed Escape the Dark Castle, a moody, thematic, tough-as-nails cooperative game, published by Themeborne and built on the bones of our collective nostalgia for brutal, dark fantasy dungeon crawlers, and we loved it, and still do. Today, designers Crispin, Thomas Pike, and James Shelton take those bones and stuff them into the nearest airlock to test the old adage about whether anyone can hear you scream in space as we try, and usually fail, to escape the dark sector. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Escape the Dark Castle, I'll briefly say that Escape the Dark Sector feels and plays very similarly to Escape the Dark Castle, but is overall slightly more complex and definitely shows the lessons learned by Themeborne from their work on developing that previous game. Specific differences will come up as we go over the gameplay, but suffice it to say that Escape the Dark Sector feels more like an advanced follow-up to Escape the Dark Castle. But, comparisons aside, Escape the Dark Sector, like its spiritual forerunner, is a cooperative survival game where players will work together to overcome dice-driven challenges, survive brutal combats, and try desperately to make it through their harrowing escape attempt alive. Each player will take on the role of a character whose loadout and attributes they will manage over the course of the game. Each game of Escape the Dark Sector revolves around the team's attempts to work their way through the mission deck in order to confront the boss and hopefully escape. The mission deck is an ever-intensifying series of challenges that constantly threatens to straight-up destroy your hopes for survival. Each encounter is accompanied by a dose of flavor text and some of Crispin's signature art, all of which makes the entire experience highly thematic, and I love the theme. Chapter cards will have you fighting monsters, encountering traps, and frequently finding yourself in what feels like no-win scenarios, where you simply need to decide how to minimize the damage. Most chapter cards call for some sort of dice-driven challenge. Each player has their own dice, which is connected to their character's stats, and additional dice will come from other sources, such as equipment and cybernetic implants. And in particular, the ranged weapons you carry with you into combat will either use ballistic ammo, energy ammo, or explosive ammo, each of which is represented by a different set of dice, which, incidentally, could have benefited from being different colors for ease of play. Ranged combat is actually one of the biggest mechanical differences between Escape the Dark Sector and Escape the Dark Castle. When your group comes up against a combat challenge, if they have the resources to do so, they can engage in ranged combat before wading into melee. Now, the advantage of ranged combat is that a series of lucky rolls could end an encounter without anyone taking injury, or at least putting you in an advantageous flanking position. On the other hand, ranged weapons are limited resources, and it's basically inevitable that you'll find yourselves in close quarters combat. Eventually, if you're lucky, you'll manage to get to the end of the mission deck, where you will confront the boss, which is randomly and secretly chosen during setup.
Die, human!
Victory here will set you free and entitle you to read that sweet mission accomplished epilogue card. But should any of your party fall anywhere along the way, it's the loser card for you and your team, at least until you try again. Like I said at the beginning, Escape the Dark Sector benefits from some of the concepts introduced in expansions to Escape the Dark Castle. Things like variable starting conditions, a wide variety of boss battles, and a unique startup item set adds variety to the game, as does the large number of chapter cards that this base game comes with, meaning that your trip through the mission deck will never be the same twice. And all of that is great, because at the end of the day, the gameplay itself in Escape the Dark Sector is admittedly a bit samey. You flip a card, you read the flavor, and probably roll some dice to fight for your life, a fight which, dice unwilling, can feel completely hopeless. That said, we like this at least as much as we did Escape the Dark Castle. Every aspect of the game just drips theme, and it's so great, and despite how luck-dependent and sometimes merciless the encounters can be, we've had a really great time exploring the bowels of this cursed space station, desperately looking for a way out. I think it is fair to say that Escape the Dark Sector is an overall more complex game to grasp, but I think that the game benefits from that slightly increased complexity, mostly. Specifically speaking about the addition of ranged combat, I like the added tactical decision space that it promises and sometimes delivers, but there are aspects of it that feel just a little bit tacked on. It's one more system in a game that might not have needed one more system. But at the end of the day, we absolutely enjoy and totally recommend Escape the Dark Sector. I still wish the chapter cards used the dice symbols instead of the names of stats, because what makes an eyeball cunning and not wisdom is completely beyond me, to be honest. But if you are in the market for a gritty, toothy, sci-fi dungeon crawler full of theme, crushing losses, and skin-of-your-teeth victories, then this is certainly a game worth checking out. Hey, Meeple and I thank you for watching. If you want to see more of our reviews, please click on either of these playlists. One of them is our full-length review series, and the other one is Game in a Minute, where we tell you everything you need to know about a game in about 60 seconds. If you'd like to subscribe, please click the G and ring the bell so that you get a notification every time we publish. And if you like what we do and want to support us, please check out links to our Patreon below. We'll see you next game. Flesh and blood.